It's Monday, January 27th, 2024, and this podcast is not powered by artificial intelligence, as that seems to be the hot topic of the day anyway, on the internet anyway, but that also means it's time for the Knee Jerks podcast of Eno, Nick, and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, are my partners in crime. First off is the man I like to call Mr. Wizard, and he's our West Coast correspondent. That would be Nick Milanovich. How's things, Nick?
Not too bad out here in sunny Seattle, and it's actually been sunny for about the last 10 days. So
yeah, and from going by the text you've been sending, you're now a hockey scout.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, and of course joining me is the man I've been doing his podcast for far too long, and that would be the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things, Greg Eno. Greg, how are things in Southeast Michigan?
Well, first of all, Al, we got to get you to understand that it's 2025, not 2024.
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Thank you.
But at least the graphic says 2025. You said 2024. But
I said 2024. It's in my show notes. It's 2024. So
we're 27 days is a little bit too much grace for that, but that's okay.
Yes.
I am Greg Eno for my Substack. Please subscribe to gregeno.substack.com. I would appreciate that. I come into your inbox every Monday. Sometimes more than that, depending on what I have to talk about. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. I'm also on Blue Sky, Greg Eno on Blue Sky as well. Follow Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Tonight, we are joined for the first time on camera. Al mentioned that we've been doing the show for some 16 years almost, and really almost from the beginning of that time. Bob Page has been a guest on our program, and that tradition continues, but this is the first time Bob is joining us through the miracles of technology, and you can see Bob talk to us instead of. I got to
get my glasses off. Then, goddammit!
Yeah, where's the makeup?
Bob is here from.
Put makeup on too.
Bob was complaining to me yesterday or the other day that it was all of 60 degrees or some crappy thing like that. Oh my God, it's 60 in Florida. It's bad down here. And he was ready. I thought he was ready to evacuate the way he was talking. And I said, look, you're not going to scare me. I'm this weather up here, I'm used to it. I'm a long time Michigander, as Bob was before he moved to New York in 1988, I think it was. And here he is in Florida for the last God knows how many years. And the temperature, the mercury goes below 50 and he loses his mind. But I'm glad he's here. Bob, how you doing?
I was able to get outside today. I always say I never leave my house unless it's at least 70, and it got to be 75. So I went for a bike ride today. That's how I keep looking so youthful, So it's working up, pretty well for me down here. But to answer your earlier question, Max Factor Pancake Makeup number 2. That's what I used my whole career. And yes, it was a little strange walking into a drugstore and saying to the nice little girl behind, "Hi, I want to buy some pancake makeup, Max Factor number 2. And they're looking at me like this as well. I'm a television anchor. That's what we do.
Well, we're going to run through a number of topics with Bob here while we have him on the program. But one of the first things I want to mention or ask him about is, he's a big Jets fan and Giants fan since moving up to New York. And the Jets have made big news for hiring a new GM and a new coach. Darren Bougie is the new GM. Aaron Glenn, the former Lions defensive coordinator, is the new head coach. Former longtime Jet Aaron Glenn. And what's your take on that whole saga going on down there with the Jets?
I've often told people that it was so frustrating to cover the FLs in my own hometown all those years.
I can't see you real well, but we can't really see you real well right now. I'm not sure what's going on with your camera. Looks like we're there. We go.
I'm holding it right here.
There we go.
I'm trying to hear you. I'm an old man with hearing issues too. You believe that?
Oh, gotcha.
True.
Terrible. So it took me only about a year, I would say, after I moved to New York in 1988 and started covering the Giants and the Jets. It took me only a year that I had unwittingly stumbled right into Detroit Lions East. It's just such incompetence. It's unbelievable. So why wouldn't the Jets first hire the head coach and then hire the general manager? Don't you think you hire a GM and then he gets to hire the coach with the owner? But that's not what they did. So, and then I'm reading these quotes, and I think Aaron Glenn said he had never met the new Jets general manager before. Never even met him. I mean, this is the way Woody Johnson does business. You know, his family has made billions in the cosmetics industry, Johnson & Johnson. So Woody bought the Jets. He has no clue. He just has no clue. And he never really has had any clue. That's what we're doing. I hear some people in New York unhappy about the Aaron Glenn hire because he's never really been a head coach before, and they referred somebody who had some experience, especially some NFL experience. I mean, I don't know. You know, we also those of us who were critical of the Lions in Detroit all those years. It was Ackerman, yours truly, Joe Falls, Jerry Green, and I think it was Joe who came up with the phrase, "Let's give the guy a chance." Because whenever the Lions made a stupid hire that you knew was never going to work out, I said, hey, give the guy a chance. Let's give the guy a chance. And that's what Woody Johnson's doing right now. So we're going to give Aaron Glenn a chance and see what happens. I don't know. Wish him the best.
Well, you know what? I don't know. I mean, he does come from a winning program. Glenn does, and he's had a lot of success
because the Lions had 2 good years. He comes from a winning program. Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, it is winning. I mean,
last winning program.
Yeah, well, last 2 years have been for sure.
Last 2 years, that doesn't make them the Kansas City Chiefs. So
no, that's true. That's true. That's very true.
And they've never been to a Super Bowl before. Yeah. At least the Jets went to one and won it.
Yeah, 56 years ago, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, whatever. That's still better than the Lions ever did, right? But don't worry, fellas. I keep hearing this all the time and reading it in the Detroit papers, which I check every day. Mm-hmm. This is the new Detroit Lions. Don't worry, folks. This is a new day. The new Detroit Lions. Didn't work out too well, did it? Didn't work out too well when it counted.
Well, that's true. They did not play well against Washington. There's no question about that. But they did. That
was when they had to.
I know. That's true. No, that's true. They were very banged up on defense. We can get into that. They were very banged up on defense, but the other New York team, the Giants. Do you follow the Giants as much as where are you at with following those teams? Are you more a Giants guy than a Jets guy? Or are you kind of both 50-50, or where are you at with that?
When I moved to New York in 1988, hired by Madison Square Garden Network to do a show that didn't exist, wasn't even on the air. They brought me in from Detroit, this total unknown guy from the hinterlands, from the Midwest, from flyover. They brought me I'm covering a Super Bowl championship team. I'm covering one of the most legendary franchises in the history of the NFL. And from day one, every member of the New York Giants, from Wellington Mara, the owner, on down, welcomed me with open arms. And I saw how they operated this franchise, the class way they did it. I saw the PR guys were even classic. You know, you didn't fight any battles with the Giants PR guys, that's for sure. They knew how to run an NFL franchise. Now, of course, Wellington's dead. And so John Mara is not doing well. Nobody else has done well either. But, on past performance, still, I really loved covering the Giants. Really loved them. It got to the point with the Lions, it was so ugly because I had to tell the truth. And the Lions didn't like me telling the truth. I had a really good relationship with Gary Danielson. I'll never forget, I walked into the locker room one time after a game, and Gary and I had a couple of words from about 20 feet apart. And Gary says to me, he says, "Why do you act like such an asshole?" I said, "Gary, but that's what he said to me. He called me an asshole to my face. Who was right in the end? And who was wrong?" The whole thing was an absolute joke, and I was so happy to get out of there. And this Sheila Hamp, she's exactly my age. I've never met her. And she just seems like she really knows what she's doing. She seems like she's smart. I think she's done a terrific job. Yes, you have to like Dan Campbell. He's a real leader of men. But at the same time, I wonder how bright he is. I don't like some of the decisions he makes. And the general manager, I don't know at all. I don't know him at all. So I'm really happy for the younger fans back in Detroit because they've never heard of Russ Thomas before.
Right.
They don't know anything about William Clay Ford. They don't know anything about the sordid history of the Detroit Lions, and they don't care. And that's fine too. But those of us who are over the age of, let's say, 60 or 65, we know.
Speaking of sordid history, last show we had on the program author Bill Morris, who just came out with a book called The Lions Finally Roar. And Bill's father was Dick Morris, who was a member of the Lions, certainly the Ford front office, and knew Bill Ford really, really well. And so Bill Morris had a lot of stories to tell. And, of course, we talked a lot about the Russ Thomas situation. And as you have speculated, Bill had put in his book that the speculation about Russ Thomas being such a long-time employee of the Lions, especially that position, was because the word was that he had helped Bill Ford get out of a sticky situation or maybe get off the bottle, and that Bill Ford felt like he was indebted to Russ Thomas.
That's the story.
That story's been going around for so long that he thinks there's something to it.
But look, I know you guys know, and Eli Zaret called me and told me about this. He bought a copy of it. You got to read this. It's great. I said, I'm not going to read this because I don't care about the Detroit Lions. I really don't. But this guy has written a new book about the Lions, and apparently he had total access to everything and everybody, and it's supposed to be terrific. I think you know the book I'm talking about, right?
Bill Morris's book called The Lions Finally Roar. Yeah, Bill Morris's dad, Dick Morris, was a higher.
Morris was the guy's name. Yeah, Morris. Yep. Yep. I don't know.
That's a very good book. So, go ahead.
You know. But it's been really sad, and I feel sorry for the younger people who are rooting their guts out in the stands. But I don't feel sorry at all for the guys I see when the TV shots go into the stands. They're 70 years old. They're 65, 75 years old, wearing their silly Lions garb, and they're brokenhearted again. I mean, what's wrong with you fellas? What's wrong with you guys? But whatever. It is what it is. That ship sailed on a long time ago.
Yeah, they came within 30 minutes of going to the Super Bowl last year, but not nearly as close this year. Now, let me ask you this question. When the Lions were up by 17 points at halftime of the NFC Championship game last year, were you saying to yourself, they're going to blow this? Or was there a part of you that wished... Or was there a part of you that wished that they wouldn't blow
it? I may not have matriculated at the prestigious University of Michigan as Nick did, but I am a magna cum laude graduate of a Big Ten university, the other one right down the road where they wear green and white. Of course I was sitting there thinking, how are they going to blow it? That's what you watch the Lions in the hysterical Thanksgiving Day game every year. How are they going to blow it this time? That's how, and it's going to always be that way until they prove that they didn't blow it. A lot of people thought this was going to be the year.
The Bears blew it on Thanksgiving. The Bears blew it on Thanksgiving this year. The Bears blew it on Thanksgiving this year. But anyway, enough of that. The baseball team is getting ready to ramp up again in spring training in a few weeks. And how about that run that the Tigers made, Bob, last September and August? That was something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the most surprised guy in the room when they did that was AJ. I really do. I mean, this club's going absolutely nowhere, zilch, and suddenly they started playing like a real Major League Baseball team. So, let's see what they do in the offseason. I don't know if you saw this today. I tweeted it out to my followers on X that a guy wrote a big article today, feature on Jack Flaherty. And he is mystified how he could be a free agent and no offers. It was so stupid when the Tigers traded this guy away instead of wanting to re-sign him. He was terrific. And what a 1-2 punch with Skubal, that is lefty-righty punch. Mm-hmm. He's sitting out there right now. In the article, he's quoted as saying how much he loved Detroit and how much he thinks he and Skubal could be a classic 1-2 punch. And nobody signed him. And the Tigers haven't signed him. How come?
They're cheap.
Well, I'll add to that, though. It's not only Flaherty, though. There's been howling about other signings for months, too, with the Tigers. They just are not signing in. I think they signed some 37-year-old pitcher off
Alex,
of the,
yeah,
off the
Alex
Indians. So, and that's about it, I think. They did very little overall.
and Gleyber Torres as well.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The former Yankee Gleyber Torres.
Well, the thing, you might as well learn to pronounce his name. It's Gleyber.
Oh,
Torres.
okay.
Okay. And the thing about it is this guy's a good ball player. And he just, I've seen him play with the Yankees a lot, living as I have all these years in New York. And, I like him. I like the signing, I guess. Nobody seemed to want him. The Yankees didn't want him back. And this thing with Lance Bregman, I find fascinating because the guy's basically a 260 hitter, 25 homers. He's going to be 31 in March, and he looks like he's on the downside of his career, and he's a mercenary. He doesn't know anything about Detroit. He cares about Detroit or is interested in the fans or something. That's what's wrong with so many sports right now. It's just you're just throwing money at guys who couldn't give a what. So we'll see. I don't know what they're going to do. I do like. I think it's been very positive that the Tigers are indeed now grooming their own talent the way it's supposed to be done. And how do you not like some of these kids that the Tigers have? Some of them look like they could turn out to be stars. I don't know. We'll see.
We're talking with Bob Page here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com. Big Alice here, Beaton. Let's go right now, though, to Nick Milanovich. What you got for Bob Page?
I wanted to get Bob's take on one of our other Detroit sports teams, and that's the Detroit Pistons. It seems like the money Tom Gores threw at Monty Williams didn't go very far, and they changed coaches. And it's like JB Bickerstaff wants to coach. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, my first thought is it's a shame that Pistons have been so laughable because they're never on national TV. Now, as we record this, they are going to be on the NBA Network tonight, and I'm looking forward to watching that game because, of course, I follow them, and they have to be the most surprising team in the NBA this year. Look, I always talk to New York people about this. They brag about, all the ball players they've had and so on. The Garden is the mecca of basketball. I say, you name any basketball player you want from New York. And you can start with Kareem if you want. And let me start naming one from Michigan. I'll start with Magic, I guess. And, Detroit is just such a great basketball city. Michigan is a great basketball state. The fans deserve better. Gores has operated this team like a fool. So, he won't sell. So we'll see what's going to happen now. As I continue to say, when I heard the Pistons probably were going to draft Cade Cunningham, I watched him 3 or 4 times play in college, and I thought, what, this kid's really good, but he's not a franchise player. He looks like he might someday be an NBA All-Star, but he's not a franchise player. And you couldn't blame the Pistons for doing what they did. He was the best player available, and they had to take him, and they did. And he's playing great. But you look at Wembanyama, and you look at the kid now playing at Duke, and these are guys you could build entire franchises around. And Cade Cunningham's not that player. He's just a really good player. But they've made strides, and I think it's great. I think it's wonderful.
What about the other players like Ivy and Duran? Those I have a feeling like some of those guys really lost a year. It was like almost criminal that they lost a year under Monty. I haven't seen kind of like that stupid level of coaching in a long time. So
that might have been the dumbest move I've ever seen in the history of the NBA. And that's saying an awful lot. When you look at a guy who was fired, who hadn't really won anything big at all, who told people he was a little burned out, he didn't want to coach again at all. The Pistons, bidding only against themselves, went in and hired this guy. I knew him a little in New York when he played for the Knicks. When they hired this guy at this astounding salary. So when they did, that set an entire new reading for NBA head coaches. So Riley had to go out and give Eric Spoelstra a contract for more money. And I don't like Eric as a coach. Good guy, good basketball man, but I watch every Miami Heat game. And I don't really like him that much as a coach. And then, of course, what are you going to do about Steve Kerr? So I guess they decided they're going to Steve Kerr $20 million a year. The whole thing was just a cluster, what. And apparently Bickerstaff's kid, from what I read, Bickerstaff's kid's doing a wonderful job, and some of these guys are developing. I just think, Detroit deserves great basketball. Maybe they'll even get it. Oh.
Let's go back to Cade, because I know that you've said that before, that you don't think he's a franchise player. What in your mind is a franchise? How do you define a franchise player, first of all?
Well, let's look at Victor Wembanyama. He's 7'4" tall.
Yeah.
He can shoot the three. He blocks shots. He defends. He intimidates. He rebounds. This is the guy, Shaq, Kareem, Wilt. That's a franchise player. And Cooper Flagg is going to become one too. I don't know if you guys have seen Cooper Flagg. My parents both graduated from Duke. My dad from Duke Law as well. So I see pretty much every Duke game. Mm-hmm. And this kid is a monster. And he just turned 18. The first part of this season for Duke, he was 17 years old and utterly dominating the ACC. And he's from Maine. Believe it or not, Maine somehow. I mean, so that's a franchise player. I thought Chet Holmgren was going to be a franchise player, but he was hurt an awful lot. And the same thing with the left-handed kid from Duke a few years ago. He was hurt all the time. So again, I'm not denigrating Cade Cunningham. I think he's a really good player. He just isn't a guy you build an entire team around.
So it's about you're because the guys that you mentioned are all big men. So for you, it sounds like it's all about big men, being a big guy.
Oh, I think so. Oh, absolutely. I think if you other than something extremely rare like a Michael Jordan or an Irvin Johnson, something like that, you really it starts with the big man. You get a completely dominant big man, and you've already got a great chance to start winning championships. I mean, if you look back at the history of the NBA, you say, well, take anybody you want to start a franchise. You might want Russell. I guess you might want Wilt. You certainly might want Kareem, but those are the kind of guys who can turn things around and change the fortunes of a franchise. So yeah, you want to do that if you can. I mean, look at how much better. Would you call Isaiah Thomas a franchise player?
Would you call Isaiah Thomas a franchise player?
Yes, I would. And again, there are exceptions to that. The Senator. I knew Isaiah Thomas. I covered him from day one in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And as much as I like Cade Cunningham, Senator Cade Cunningham is no Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, there's nobody here is going to compare Cade to Zeke yet. That's for damn sure. But it's, I guess what I'm saying, and to your credit, you did mention Jordan is an exception as well. And LeBron, of course. I mean, LeBron isn't 7 feet tall either.
Sure.
But I just looked up Wembanyama, whatever I pronounce his name's numbers, and he is having a monster year. He is at 24.5 points a game, 11 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field, 35% from three-point land, which isn't bad for a guy of his size.
He's 20 years old. He's 20 years old, and he has. Yeah. And he's going to grow a little bit. He's going to hit the weight room. He's going to add some weight. I mean, you're looking at one of the greatest monsters who ever lived in basketball history right here. You watch it. I've seen him play a lot, and I'm kind of a hoops junkie. I've seen him play a lot. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, and he'll, San Antonio, which is the home of David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Here, this might be the next, big guy out of San Antonio to do a lot of great things. Let's go to Big Al, what you for Bob Page.
Yeah, well, more than that, San Antonio is the home of the man who invented basketball, Greg Popovich.
Pop. Oh, by the way,
and if you don't believe me that Popovich invented basketball, just go ask him sometime.
Speaking of before we get to Al, Pop, as you know, had a stroke. It turns out that he had a stroke in late, I think it was early November. That explained his absence. I think he's still not coaching the team from the sidelines, but the interim guy. I don't know who the interim. I don't even know the name of the interim guy, but he says that he talks to Pop all the time, and Pop is the same guy he was. He's just not able to come back yet because he's recovering from the stroke. So now, after having said that, I'll go to Big Al. What you got for Bob Page?
Well, since we're kind of running the gamut here, let's touch on the Red Wings a little bit because they made a lot of news with firing their coach, Derek Lalonde, and replacing him with Todd McLellan. And you've seen a lot of teams quit on their coach or stop listening to their coach. And looking at the Wings now, under the new regime compared to what they were under Lalonde, it's like two different franchises. So did the Wings quit on Lalonde?
I see every Detroit Red Wings game. I got that NHL thing, nearby. And I think Newsy, or as I call him, Uncle Fester, I think he so paid his dues and so deserved this chance. And he had a bunch of guys who really are not top NHL players, and they are there only because Stevie Yzerman thought they were, and signed them. So you're not in with a great club to begin with, and you always get a bump. When you almost always get a bump when you change coaches like that in the middle of the season. But so the Wings obviously have played better. But guess what? They're not in the playoff spot right now. Are they going to be? There's an awful lot of competition right there. It's almost like the Wings have to win every game just to qualify for one of the 2 wild card spots. So I don't like that. I like some of the things I see from time to time, and then other times I don't. I would say right now they got about 7 or 8 guys on this club who, if you brought them down here to West Palm Beach, gave them a stick and a puck, and put them on the ocean, on West Palm Beach, they still couldn't put in the ocean. They still couldn't shoot the puck in the ocean. And a bunch of these guys don't know when to shoot. I'm screaming at my television, so 2-on-1 break or whatever. Shoot! And they don't. They fancy Dan the puck away. They make the extra, and they don't score. It's just, and how many, you look at the frustrations of the Red Wings over the last 5 years, right? And the Yzer plan. Well, you got to give the guy time, okay? So he's had 5 years, and I think this is Stevie's 6th year. And I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And is he going to churn the roster some more, maybe get rid of some guys he shouldn't have, as he did in the past offseason, for instance? I don't know. I don't. At this point, it's funny. You'd have to say you're almost more optimistic about the Pistons than you are the Wings.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that, because the asset management of Yzerman has been very questionable, specifically between Waltman, what they traded the 2 defensemen and a 2nd-round pick, to get a 3rd-round pick back in return, just to have a little bit extra cap space. So it really feels like he wanted to make a big swing in free agency and missed.
You tell me. I love Jake Waltman. I couldn't believe when they traded him. Then they went ahead. You want some offense at the blue line? They got Shane Gostisbehere. Guy looked great. They got rid of him, and he's tearing it up this year. He's been one of the top men in the league this year. Why did Stevie do it? I don't get it, and it's frustrating. But then, what's the out here? Okay, I mean, they dumped when I was a kid. You guys may be a little too young to remember this, but yes, they dumped on Gordy, and eventually they managed to, to force him out. It was just disgraceful and shame. So you're looking at Steve Yzerman, who probably is the 2nd greatest player in the history of the Detroit Red Wings. What's the exit plan here if there's going to be one? You can't. You really can't fire Steve Yzerman. I don't know. It's pretty. You never know. You never know what you're going to get. As I say, I watch every Red Wings game. I tune in. I never know what to think. We got this one tonight. I never know what to think.
Yeah, because we've talked to Keith Gabe about this sort of stuff, and he says the same thing: is that as long as the Ilitches own the Red Wings, he thinks Steve Yzerman has a job for life, no matter what happens.
Well, I don't know. Look, there are a lot of questions about this. Okay, first of all, I was fairly close to Mike Ilitch. Okay, I got along great with Mike. I might have met Marion once or twice, but she's very much involved still. How much involved? Who's really calling the shots? I don't think I've ever met Chris Ilitch. Does he have the desire and the will to win the way his dad did? I would suggest he doesn't. Does he know what he's doing? I don't know if he knows what he's doing. How close is he to Yzerman? And is what you said true? Are they so close he's never going to fire Stevie? I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see.
I mean, one of the things that comes up since you're talking about Chris Ilitch, doesn't matter which sport you're talking about, hockey or baseball, he's often accused of always, well, at least by the fans, of being cheap. Does it look like it's cheapskateness? Because I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but because the emphasis in both cases is drafting and developing.
Right, but I would counter that immediately and say he doled out $25 million a year on a long-term contract to one of the biggest stiffs I have ever seen in Major League Baseball, the beloved Javier Baez. So you know what I'm saying? It's just you just it's. I don't know that they are afraid to spend, and heaven knows they got the money to spend. I don't know. I don't know if Chris knows what he's doing. I don't know what Mom has to do with it. Does Chris leave Stevie alone and let him make all the signings? Does he leave the young guy running the Tigers right now? Does he leave him alone and let him make the decisions? I don't know. And when you look at the Detroit print media, especially, it's soft. So you don't have a lot of guys in the Detroit print media digging behind the scenes to find out what's really going on. And they're going to print it in the paper so we all know.
Right. That's true. You mentioned, Bob, that you watch a lot of hockey vis-a-vis that package you have. I'm just kind of curious. Do you enjoy watching hockey as much now as you always have, or do you feel like, is there a nostalgia bias that you feel like hockey isn't maybe not what you thought it was back in the day, or do you still enjoy watching it as much as ever before?
That's a great question, and I'll give you a real simple answer. Hell no. When I grew up in Detroit in the 6-team NHL, and I was just about as big a Leafs fan as I was a Detroit fan. Why? Because the Leafs game is what we got on TV every Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada. We watch. Yep. So by the time I'm 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever it is, I can give you the jockstrap size of every player in the 6-team NHL, right? They were all gods. And now, I mean, I try to remember every time the Wings play at some point during the day, I try to remember to go look at the roster of tonight's opponent, because you've never heard of 6 or 7 of the guys or more. Have no idea how well they're playing because there's so many teams. When they're on the ice, because they wear helmets and now eye shields, have no idea who they are or what they look like. The only reason, I enjoy watching the Wings games, because I know what everybody's team looks like and I know all the numbers. But if somebody comes to town, you name it, it doesn't matter what team, Winnipeg or whatever it is, or Seattle, who the hell plays for them? I don't know. Right. And it's just so, no, I don't know who's having a great, the one thing, I like many things about him. I think he's a terrific announcer. But the one thing I like about Ken Daniels is that he flows in this TV play-by-play where some guy's got the puck and he's skating down the ice, and Kenny will tell you, and there's so-and-so, and yes, he's in his 3rd year out of the University of North Dakota, scored 24 goals last year, and was, he gives you that information. I don't know. I have no idea who they are. And so it's a big problem. There's no question, I think. No question.
Yeah. I was just curious about that because, we tend to think back to the old days and think that the old days were better. I want to ask you about Dylan Larkin because I kind of look at Dylan the same way that you might look at Cade Cunningham, in the sense that obviously he's following a very long, illustrious line of Red Wings captains over the years, many of whom are in the Hall of Fame or will be in the Hall of Fame. And you wonder, is he – I like Dylan. I'm kind of like you about how you are about Cade. I like Dylan. I think he's a nice player. But I don't think he's a franchise player either. At the same time,
that's a great analogy, and I've been saying this for years. Mm-hmm. When the Wings need a sniper or two up front, a guy who can score 40 or 50 goals, that's not, and it's never going to be Dylan Larkin. He's an outstanding two-way player. He's one of our own. He's from Detroit. Grew up a wacko Wings fan, still lives in Detroit, went to Michigan, the whole thing. I think the world of Dylan Larkin. I think he's a wonderful captain, but he is not a big-time superstar. He doesn't quite have that much talent. I mean, obviously, one of them on your team, and that's fine. But as opposed to Cade Cunningham, I mean, what does he care about Detroit and the state of Michigan? He's not from there.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, I can't believe that he's already played 700 games in the NHL. My God. How fast did that go?
I was watching that game. What? Dylan's played 700 games in the NHL? It's really hard to believe. Really hard to believe.
He might be one of those captains, though, that there's never been – the last captain that has not led the Red Wings to the playoffs as captain, I think you have to go back to the 70s. And I don't know that Dylan Larkin now is I don't know when the Red Wings, you mentioned it earlier that they're in the hunt, but they're not there yet. There's probably still too many teams. I agree with you. They probably won't make the playoffs because there's too many teams in front of them. But you start to wonder. I mean, this kid could be the captain of the Red Wings and never play a playoff game, that's almost unthinkable.
Well, they'll make the playoffs eventually. You know that. I mean,
I don't know.
but still, and then what do they got another. The biggest part of any hockey team is goaltending. And so, we got a guy in Cam Talbot who looked great the other night and is capable of playing great. But he's also, 37 years old. Yeah. Alex Lyon's he's out, and I have no idea what happened to Billy Husso. So maybe a couple of kids that the Wings have, the Michigan State kid, whatever, down at Grand Rapids, maybe they're going to be good. They better hope so, because if they're not, it's just going to be more frustration for Wings. And I know ticket prices ain't getting any cheaper. Concessions ain't getting any cheaper. And after a while, people are pissed. People get pissed and want more out of this team. And they may get it this year even. I don't know. Just got to wait and see. We're
talking with Bob Page here of the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com. Big Al Beaton is here. Let's now go, though, to Nick Milanovich. Once again, what you got for Bob Page?
One more question about the Red Wings. We were making the analogy of Cade and Larkin, but then there's also another person on the Wings, kind of like I view Ivy. Ivy might actually be the better player in some ways on the Pistons. What about Lucas Raymond? Because if there's anybody who just never gives up and is fighting and scrapping all the time, it seems to be Raymond. What are your thoughts on him?
I wish Mickey Redmond would stop saying, "Oh, he's a superstar." You think he's a superstar? Go to any of about 14 NHL cities and they say, "Who is Lucas Raymond?" Come on. He's a kid on the way up. He's already a terrific player. I think and I hope he's going to be Detroit Red Wing for a long time to come, and maybe even eventually, a Wings captain. I think, this kid has a great upscale situation where he's a terrific player, but he's only 21 years old now, 22, something like that. He's real good. The guy who was disappointed me a little bit, because I expected him to be a sniper. I expected him to be a 40, 45 goal scorer, and he's not. He's a good player, 30 goal scorer, and that's Farmington Hills zone. You know what I'm talking about here. I mean, so Alex DeBrincat, to me, has been good, but he hasn't been great. And, I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe these kids, my God, they're bringing up these basketball players from Grand Rapids, and they look like they're going to be really good players. Edvinson's 6'6", and the other Swedish kid they brought up is 6'8", and they have talent. So, my mind isn't closed to the Red Wings becoming a really good club. Again, there's nothing we can do but watch the games, wait and see what happens, and then wait and see what happens in the offseason with Yzerman. Again, I think he's just churned this roster, churned it too much, and maybe he's learned a lesson. Maybe he hasn't.
Yeah.
Do you, a follow-up to that, you mentioned the kids out in Grand Rapids. Do you think it seems like you think they're handling them well? I remember when who's that goalie prospect that they have? Kosa, yeah. Yeah, do you remember he was doing he was called up because of their goalies were all hurt,
right?
And he was going to make his debut in one of the games, and Uncle Fester actually held him out of the first period so he can kind of ease into the game, and brought him in for the second and third, which was pretty strange if you ask me. I don't know what the logic was behind that, and then I've heard other young guys just being overcooked in the minors and not being brought up.
I don't know. When you're not winning, everything and everybody is substitute for this. Right. You haven't heard the last of Kosa yet. My guess is he's going to be a good NHL goaltender. But how good? How good? When you got a kid right from Detroit named Connor Hellebuck, who's put Winnipeg Jets on his back the last 3 or 4 years and led them, how come he's not on the Red Wing uniform? How do they miss him? So you can go on and on about stuff like this. I don't know what's going to happen, but they got to win. They have to start winning, and they have been winning and doing very well under Todd McLellan. So we'll see if this continues. Guy seems like he's certainly a veteran. He's certainly tested. He sure as hell knows what he's doing, and maybe the players are scared, so they will play for him. If some of these crybabies, which is the only excuse I ever heard, if they didn't like the system that Uncle Fester was playing, tough. Mm-hmm. You're making millions of dollars. You're getting paid millions of dollars. Shut up and go play. It's not as though they're playing for a tyrant, like a Mike Keenan or somebody like that. Just shut up and go play. And to me, they were not professional, and they didn't. And then you get McLellan in there, who's a tough guy, and says, I'm not going to tolerate this. Now they're playing pretty well for the most part.
Yeah, they are.
Well, it seemed like it actually worked on Patrick Kane, not just some of the young guys too, right?
Right.
Well, Patrick Kane's done. He look. He can make the occasionally odd, really good play. His numbers aren't terrible, but this is not Patrick Kane. It's just an old guy who looks like Patrick Kane and can score the odd goal, and play well at times. Is he providing veteran leadership in the room? I don't know. Every time I see him interviewed, he's so bored he puts me to sleep. Doesn't exactly. He doesn't exactly remind you of Mark Messier, whom I.
Oh, did we lose him? Bob, did we lose you?
I think so.
Wait.
Oh, no, we still got we still got a little bit of video there.
Yeah. Did we lose Bob?
We may have. I wonder if his battery died. Yep, I hear him. There he is. There he is.
I got plenty of battery here.
All right, good.
Plenty of juice left in the old man too.
All right.
Let's go to Big Al now. What you got for Bob Page?
Well, maybe a little NFL thing, because I don't know how you reacted when I heard what happened to the Cowboys and Jerry Jones deciding to fire Mike McCarthy after the hiring cycle was completely done, and doing so after the window closed on interviewing coaches, and then he decides just to hire, Brian Schottenheimer, and he announces it at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, a.k.a. a Friday night news dump. What in the hell is going on in Dallas?
Well, that's a good question. I think everyone should know the answer to that, because the answer is really simple. The Dallas Cowboys need to fire their general manager now.
Exactly.
Do you think he's another William Clay Ford at this point?
You guys there?
Yeah, we're here.
We're here.
Yeah.
We're here.
Well, you know what you should do is breathe heavily into the mic to let me know you're still alive once in a while.
Well, yeah. Nick asks, is he becoming the next William Clay Ford, Jerry Jones?
Well, the thing about Bill Ford, Bill Ford was a very nice man. I would like to say I wasn't a first name basis with Bill Ford, but I wasn't. He called me Bob, and I called him Mr. Ford. A very nice guy, and it really hurt to see the man basically destroyed by the failings of his football team. And then long after I left for New York, occasionally I would see a Lions game on TV, and he just was sitting up forlornly, in his private suite, keeping people away from him and stuff like that. It was too bad. I'll say this about Jerry Jones also. The first year he bought the Cowboys, whatever year that was, 89, 90, something like that.
Yeah, right.
So the Cowboys are at the Meadowlands. Yeah, Cowboys are at the Meadowlands to play the Giants. And it just so happens when the game is over, the two of us walk out together. I said, "Oh, you're Jerry Jones, the Cowboys are." I introduced myself. And this guy, all the way down to the elevator and down to the locker rooms, did nothing but pick my brains. Okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this guy? What do you think about that coach? In other words, he didn't make all this money by being dumb. He's a bright guy, and he wanted to do well, and he desperately wants to do well, but he doesn't understand. His ego is so large. Yes, he played football. He sure did. But that doesn't make you a competent general manager, a competent owner. Jerry just needs to get the hell out of the way. He's not going to do it. So he'll die in a few years. Obviously, he's an old guy now. I guess the franchise will devolve upon his son. How sharp is he? A lot of questions, boys. A lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. So tell me, Bob, what have you ever talked to Denny McLean at all?
Actually, I have not spoken. He spent 2 nights at my house where I am right now in West Palm Beach. Last winter, he had a card show down here, which is what he does for a living. He's Denny McLean for a living, and so he stayed with me for a couple of nights, and I really haven't spoken to him much since then. Eli's fairly close to him, and they talk occasionally. I don't know. I hope Denny's okay. I mean, you're making me feel guilty because I really should give him a call. But he hadn't called me either. So, I guess Denny's okay. I mean, it's just you look at Denny, and we all understand this. How it's like he's the baseball version of Keith Richards. Why is this man still alive?
It's a good. Wow.
I just don't know.
Absolutely.
But fortunately, he is. So see about that. And boy, they've just been everybody dropping like flies every day.
Yeah.
Everybody's dropping.
I know you're very close to Eli there. What's Eli up to? How's he doing? How's everything okay? He's healthy and everything's going okay with him?
Danny, you talking about who?
No, Eli.
Oh, Eli's fine. Sure. Yeah.
Good.
So Eli, look, I've been on his butt for years to try to get him to move down here. I mean, he can buy all of us. He can buy all of us put together, right?
Yeah.
So what are you doing, man? You're slipping and sliding through the snow, trying to sell advertising for your own personal agency. Now he's got this podcast thing. He's always got his fingers in something, doing this. I said, are you gonna be the first guy to die and take it with you? What are you doing?
Right.
Get your butt down here. Because golf is his main passion in life. So about 3 years ago, I guess, he met some guy who has a really nice condo over in a ritzy part on the other side of Florida, the Gulf side of Florida. And they're very close to his wife's sisters. Because they're extremely close. So this is the third straight winter. They come down and they rent a place over on the other side of Florida, and all he does is play golf every day. Yeah, I guess he keeps his. I think he still does Drew Lane's podcast and appearance on that every week. I guess he does it, over the phone or something from Florida. I really don't know. Eli's fine. Eli's doing well. He's doing fine.
Good. Anything else, guys? Before we let Bob go, does anybody else have another one they want to fire his way?
Sure. One quick one. Did you root for Notre Dame or Ohio State?
Well, you guys are
Meteor.
You guys are on fire tonight. I mean, you're asking really great. I mean, Dick Purton said, "Oh, how I hate Ohio State," and made a record of that. But I think you know me well enough to know that I am an intellectual, and as such, I am an atheist. And the Roman Catholic Empire is one of the evil empires in the world. Notre Dame as a Jesuit institution is actually pretty good academically. It's very good. I can't root for Notre Dame to do anything, to win anything. So yes, I was pulling for Ohio State. I watched the first half of that game because I'm so disgusted with Big Ten college football. I watched 2 games all year. I watched the Michigan State game. I watched, I think, the Michigan-Ohio State game. And after a half of this game, I was done. A pox on their house. They've destroyed Big Ten college football. They have destroyed it. And every time I look up, tonight, so you know what I'm doing right now, later on tonight, I'm actually going to record. I record every game. I am recording the USC versus UCLA basketball game from Los Angeles. Now, why would I care about that? Because they're in the big 18, 22, 24. And this weekend, my alma mater, Michigan State goes to LA this weekend. And in the space of 3 days, they're going to play both teams. So I want to see what UCLA and USC look like, at least. And speaking of Michigan State, you haven't asked me about that. What a job this was done, as usual. I mean, this I didn't think that there was any hope for this team to speak of. To get any more than just okay, good. And now they're ranked 7th in the nation this week. They're so deep and talented. They could win the national championship. Wouldn't that be something?
Do you think Bo is spinning in his grave, seeing what's happened to the Big Ten?
What's that?
Do you think that Bo Schembechler is spinning in his grave now that he's seeing what's happened to the Big Ten?
It's completely ridiculous. And I hosted many years ago in Detroit. I hosted Johnny Orr's TV show. So I grew up a huge Michigan basketball fan. I covered Michigan basketball for years. I was with them at the Spectrum in Philadelphia in 1976 when they played Indiana for the national championship. I covered Michigan so long I was close to all the guys. Now Bobby Knight's ball boy has taken over in Denver, and he has, count them, 11 transfers on that team. NIL money, man. They went out and got 11 ringers to come in, and this is what the University of Michigan's basketball program is. Unreal.
It's not the same, that's for sure.
Speaking of which, I just read where Ohio State paid $20 million for their team, but ran a $37 million deficit in their athletic program.
Yeah. Ohio State was the second highest paid team in the country this year. Texas was first, and they didn't quite win. I'm not going. I'm not watching, and I'm not going, and I don't care. And if basketball gets too bad, it's going to be the same way with that. It's just, I mean, this whole NIL thing and paying these players the amounts of money. I mean, Michigan State got some ringer from Oregon State last year. They paid $1 million. The quarterback at Michigan State last year, I don't know what his name is, and I couldn't care less. They paid $1 million. Michigan State didn't have too good a year, did they? They bring in the head coach from Oregon State. He brings almost all his staff with him. It's money, and a pox on their noses, as I say.
Yep. Bob, thanks for doing this. We had a little bit of a hiccup trying to get you on here, but it worked out okay, and we appreciate it. And we'll definitely have to bring you back.
Always a pleasure, boys. Whatever you want, and I'm going to start watching my reporting of your beloved Detroit Pistons to see how good they are.
Okay.
All right.
Right on.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, sure thing.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Just the three of us now. So
Yep.
that was. And first off, that's actually I got to give Bob credit because we had a lot of trouble getting him on, and I got to give him credit for hanging in there till we finally got him on the show because this is the first time he's done this with how we're doing it differently now with StreamYard. It's a bit different than what he was used to. We used to do it on Skype. We just have him use his phone.
Yep.
So and he just call us. So. New technology. Who am I to say? Because hell, I had problems getting this going myself today. So
Right.
for some reason, it was not recognizing my mic. So God help us. We all have our days. But thanks again to Bob. It's always fun talking to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Well, Greg, you know what that means. You know what time it is.
It's time to play Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al and Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if either of those two gentlemen can correctly guess this person within the first two clues, they'll win 2 tickets to the Detroit Dragway, Sibley at Dick's.
Sunday. Yes.
That's right before next time, but that's okay.
Yes, it is.
This person made his name in football, is continuing to make his name in football. He was born on this date in 1959. He's a former player, a very good one actually, played wide receiver. But as he gets further and further away from his playing career, people know him way more for his work in the broadcast booth. And he played football in the AFC, in the old AFC Central Division, where that was the division of the Oilers, Browns, Bengals, and Steelers.
It's got to be Chris Collinsworth.
It's got to be Chris Collinsworth, and it is Chris Collinsworth.
Yes, he was a wide receiver for the Bengals, and didn't he? I believe he played in the Ivy League, if I remember right, in college.
He went to school at Florida.
Yeah. I don't know why the Ivy League seemed to stick with, but yeah. Other than that, though. A wide receiver doing play, not play-by-play, but color. I can't think of any other ones, honestly. They're almost all quarterbacks or linemen for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. And you saw a few sideline reporters like Lynn Swan.
Yeah.
But in the booth, you're right. In the booth that's a good observation. I don't know what I think about that. But yeah, Collinsworth is 66 today. He was actually a pretty good receiver for the Bengals. He may have made a couple of.
He was a Pro Bowl receiver. Yeah,
he was pretty good. But he obviously by now, and his son Jack, who honestly, God, he sounds just like him. You close your eyes, he sounds just like his dad. Jack Collinsworth is also, I think, working for NBC. Or one of those networks as a studio.
Yeah, he's on that Sunday Night Football gang. It has about 20 people on.
Right.
They have a bigger roster than Saturday Night Live at this point.
Yeah, right. They have almost as many guys on their on their team as the players do on an NFL roster, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So yeah, good job. So 2 tickets to I guess you'll take your significant other down to the Detroit Dragway, which actually Detroit Dragway is not far from where you live right now.
I know it's just south of Downriver. Before they closed it down 30, 40 years ago, whatever. Yeah, it was. God, I think just out. I'm trying to somewhere in the Southgate, Woodhaven-ish area down there. Sibley and Dix, yeah. So that would be close to Southgate, yeah. Downriver, yeah. That was where all the hot rodders went. So I can't wait. I'll go fire up my GTO if I had a GTO. And all right, with that, we got since we're running a little shorter on time, we need to get to work here. So. Yeah. Obviously, the big news locally has to be the Detroit Lions because the season came to a massively crushing, disappointing end last weekend. They became the top seed, got the bye week, and then they picked a horrible time to probably play their worst game, one of their worst games of the year, turning the ball over 5 times in a 45-31 divisional round home game loss to the Commanders. And for what it's worth, the Commanders went on to lose a similar game this past weekend to the Eagles. The Eagles are going to go on, won the NFC, and will play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And now it's been, I don't know about you guys, but the Lions fan base, I have never seen a bigger bunch of whiners, criers, and I don't know what else to say. But it's like they get to this point now they can't handle it, with a loss. Because all I've heard on sports talk radio, all I've seen on social media like Twitter and Reddit and Facebook and every place else, is that they're looking for a scapegoat, and it's looking more and more like that scapegoat is Ben Johnson. Right. Just because of that I will admit I was not a fan of that call. Third and short. The Lions were on their way probably to score a touchdown. They were set up to go for it on 4th down. They score there. It's a 14-3 game. Who knows how the game goes instead? But Goff gets hit. Actually, as Dan Campbell said, guys, everything that could go wrong on that play did go wrong. Graham Glasgow missed his block. Amon-Ra St. Brown slipped on his route. The backfield was empty because for whatever reason they decided to split David Montgomery to a wide receiver position, and then when Goff went to reset, he got hit, had the ball in the wrong hand, fumble, all hell broke loose, and then the game completely turned there. So, who's to blame? Jared Goff had a horrible game of 3 interceptions and the fumble. Ben Johnson did not have one of his better games calling it, even though the Lions did gain over 400 yards and put up 31 points. You had Dan Campbell. I don't know. It was this typical Campbell game. There's a couple of mistakes, specifically the 12 men on the field. I think I was like late 3rd, early 4th quarter. That really hurt them. And then you have a defense that just couldn't get a stop. So I know fans want a scapegoat, but there's plenty of blame to go around, isn't there, Greg?
Well, the piece that I wrote last Monday, essentially, which was just 2 days after the game, essentially said that I asked the question, were you really surprised, Lions fans? I mean, all year we kept hearing, the defense can't hold up. Another injury on defense. Oh, my gosh, when's it going to end? And that was true. There were tons and tons and tons of injuries. And it was always, the narrative was, the defense is too banged up to hold up. Okay. Well, they got the first seed, and so that looked good. That looked promising. But really, to me, and I said this in the piece, to me, the Lions fans got exactly what they were thinking was going to happen. It just came sooner than later. They were never going to hold up against the Eagles. They were never going to hold up against the Bills or the Chiefs if it came to that with that defense. They weren't going to do it. And now, it was a little surprising that they failed to hold up against the Commanders because Jaden Daniels played out of his freaking mind. He played about the most perfect game a rookie quarterback can play in the playoffs. That's for sure. He looked like the veteran. He looked like the 10-year veteran, and Goff looked like the rookie. Okay, quite frankly. But it's disappointing. But to the fan base, I would just say once again, are you surprised by this? I mean, did you really think that I know they really thought they would beat the Commanders? Yes, that's true. But did you really think this was a Super Bowl winning defense? Did you really think they were going to get past the Eagles with that defense? Did you really think that if they did that, they'd get past Mahomes or Josh Allen in the Super Bowl? Do you really think that? You got to ask yourself the question, because it's just funny to me that that's all we heard about from the fans themselves was, we can't take another injury on defense. It's over. It's over. It's over. We can't hold on.
And then they had another injury on defense when they lost
Amik Robertson,
Amik Robinson, yes.
Yeah. So, and I understand the disappointment, but I don't think this was a shocker. I mean, Daniels did play incredibly. We were up together 2 weeks ago. That was before the game, and I said that I thought the Lions would win. I thought that Daniels would have, he's a rookie and blah blah blah, but he played like a stone cold 10-year veteran, cool as a cucumber. And so many big plays, so many chunk plays the Lions gave up in that game, including on the ground, by the way.
Right.
It just, it just all came home to roost. It just caught up to them. And I know that that's not what you had it. You felt like it was all laid out for them to go to the Super Bowl. And I said the same thing. Road to the Super Bowl goes to Detroit. But man, they just couldn't. But you're right about Al. You're right about finger pointing. There's all those you mentioned at the top of the discussion, all those things that went wrong and all those things you can blame. And that's where you should leave it. There are so many things to blame. You can't blame any one person, any one facet. It all shit the bed. And like you said, one of the worst games that they played all season. It was unfortunate timing, but it was just a perfect storm of things. And now everybody wants to blame the coordinators for being distracted with their interviews. And,
that's the one that gets me. Yeah.
They didn't have enough focus on the Commanders because they were busy interviewing for other jobs, and so everything is under scrutiny right now.
I would just add that when it comes to this fan base, how they're acting right now, I've seen emo teenagers handle a breakup with a girlfriend better than his fan base is right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. Especially, that's the one that gets me, Greg, is the coordinators were distracted, as if this doesn't happen every single year, every hiring cycle, that in the playoffs, coordinators who are hot get interviewed. That's just how it is. And it just comes, I'm at a loss for words. It really feels like this fan base is full of angsty teenagers, and they're throwing shit fits right now. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Nick, where do you fall on all this when it comes to the fallout of this loss?
It's kind of, first of all, and I think even Dan Campbell was saying this last year. It's like, you're not necessarily going to get back here.
Yep, that's exactly what he said.
The following year. You can't assume that just because, hey, we got to the NFC Championship, now we just tweak a little the dials over here, pull this lever over there, and we're over the top.
Right.
Bullshit. Actually, after the game was over, or around, somewhere in the game, Tom Brady and his co-host there were talking, and Brady said this, like, whatever happens in this season does not necessarily translate into the following season. You can't just kind of like assume you're on an upward trajectory from season 1 to season 2.
Yeah, as he put it back to ground zero, essentially, what he was saying. Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it, like, the season's over, Super Bowl is done, everything resets.
Yep.
New coaches brought in on some teams, like that's what's happening with the Bears this year. You think they're going to be the doormat they were last year? Probably not. You think the Minnesota Vikings are going to stay pat and not try and get tougher next year? I highly doubt that. Green Bay is always in the mix. So I think it's going to be harder even in the NFC North because every team makes adjustments, including the Lions. It's just a matter of seeing which one does. So all of this kind of like fallout and shock, it's like, what do you expect? This year is not last year.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. Plus, the whole team was – this Lions team was living on borrowed time with that defense. It's been the case all year long. The Minnesota game, the last game of the season, gave them a false sense of security because they beat Minnesota pretty handily. I mean, it was pretty clear. But then you see Minnesota does not recover and plays equally lousy against the Rams the following week.
Right.
So, I mean, they got lucky and won 14 games this past season, but I don't think they were that good of a team either. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, like Greg said, like kind of all came together, and they had a first-round exit. I mean, the Red Wings, you remember the Red Wings in the 90s? They were supposed to win the Stanley Cup, and they shit the bed several times, even though they were loaded with players. Loaded. And in the Lions case, the defense has never been that great while Dan Campbell was here. It was good. It was reasonable. But all play centers around Jared Goff on this team, no matter what. If he's playing well, they have a chance because their offense is good. But it requires a lot of timing and excellent execution. And when he's off throwing 5 picks or whatever it is, they crash and burn because, their team is carried by the offense, and it just wasn't there. So poor defense, the offense fell apart, and you got a first-round exit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you'd add. I think the pressure probably got to the offense because they knew the offense could not make mistakes because they had to cover for that defense. How many times did we see it through the season? And it looked like Goff was trying to make a few plays that might not have been there just because he knew they needed to score points because the defense was not getting a stop. Against Washington, it became pretty obvious early on that the defense wasn't going to stop Daniels. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then the other thing, never let Jamison Williams throw the football. I mean, he's a fast receiver; he can catch, but he's not very bright. Yeah. And so let him stick to his position, what he's good at. And
that is a thing that I'm sure they told him, if it's not there, Jameson, just run the ball, throw it into the dirt. But, that knowing Jameson Williams, he'd probably played a hero. That pass wasn't even close. So, and I think that's what set off the fan base in regard to Ben Johnson. And speaking of Ben Johnson, guys, he is now the head coach of the Chicago Bears. He has also taken with him some of the Lions coaches. He has taken wide receiver coach Anton Randall, I believe, and also assistant quarterback coach J.T. Barrett. So apparently, guys, it's funny that there was a lot of talk that the Lions, because also Aaron Glenn, we all should say, the defensive coordinator, also left, as you heard Bob talking earlier, that he is now the New York Jets head coach. And he gave a very Dan Campbell-esque speech today in his introductory presser. Yeah. We're built for this fucking shit, as he said. And with that hiring, at the least, the Lions will get, thanks to the Rooney Rule, they will get a third-round pick at the end of the round this year and also next year. So, but it's funny that everybody thought that the Lions would probably hire from within for the offensive coordinator position and probably go from outside for the defensive coordinator position. And it looks like they're going to do the complete opposite. Replacing Aaron Glenn is going to be, which has already been announced, is linebackers coach Kelvin Shepard. And apparently we know because we've seen him on things like Hard Knocks, he is another leader of men type in the mold of Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn. He's been promoted from linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. And on the offensive side of the ball, it looks like the man they've targeted is actually the passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos, John Morton. He's a 30-year vet, been in the league. He's part of the Sean Payton tree, which means he knows Dan Campbell because they have coached together. Morton was the offensive coordinator for only 1 year with the Jets in 2017. From all accounts, he got scapegoated because, as we know, that franchise is a train wreck, and he had guys that have career years with the Jets that year. He worked with Campbell with the Saints. He was with the Lions for a year as a senior assistant in 2022. And right now, Morton's calling card is that he is credited for developing Broncos rookie quarterback Bo Nix, who quarterbacked the Broncos into the playoffs and had a very, very good rookie season for a quarterback. So, I guess to go with you, Greg, are you kind of surprised as to how things went? Because all the talk is that the Lions are going to promote like Tanner Eggstrom or someone like that, or from within, or Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, had been interviewing for offensive coordinator positions, and then they go outside for it. And I think that threw a lot of people off.
Well, they did and they didn't. You mentioned Morton was here in 2022. He's a Michigan guy. I think he went to Western Michigan. I think he's from the Detroit area.
Yes, he is.
He's not like he's some guy from way across.
Yeah, he'll know the lay of the land. In other words, yes.
Right.
When it comes to the Lions.
Part of the excitement over Shepard being promoted, from what I saw, was that the Lions were being lauded for doing exactly that, promoting from within, and that they said it's a morale thing, and it's nice to see that if you pay your dues, you'll be recognized within the organization, which that's great for corporate America. It doesn't always work out that way in the pro football sport. But that was the narrative on why fans were excited about Shepard. Now with this Morton thing, which kind of came out of nowhere. I think they're trying to wrap their heads around, and I think they're trying to do what you just said, and that is, he had some Bo Nix had a lot, his success was maybe due to Morton, and I think they're trying to wrap their heads around the whole idea. Although I don't think that they're as bullish about promoting from within when it comes to offensive coordinator as they did on the defense for whatever reason. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think you just have to trust the guys making the decision. I presume that this decision is mostly Dan Campbell's, if not entirely Dan Campbell's. And if Dan Campbell feels like he didn't work out with Anthony Lynn, we all know that. That was the first.
Greg, your mic is fading out. You might want to try being a little closer.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
There we go. Yeah,
okay?
There we go.
Yep.
So maybe it's just a matter of Campbell's learned from that. Maybe this. I don't know. I'm okay. I guess it's like, well, we don't know yet. We don't know anything about this guy yet, of course.
Right.
But the Ben Johnson to the Bears thing, though, that did surprise me a little bit. I didn't think Ben would go there. I really didn't. I thought that franchise has been kind of odd lately, and with a lot of typical cycles of new head coach, new quarterback, on and on for years now, going all the way back to Trubisky, maybe even before Trubisky.
Right.
Cycling new quarterbacks and then new coaches to go with those quarterbacks, and it never works out, and they have to start the cycle all over again. But Ben Johnson he says, this is where I wanted to be. I guess he wanted the job last year. They didn't move on from Eberflus last year. Eberflus, however you pronounce the name. But now they have, and he wanted to be there, and there's something about the Bears that he likes, and he wanted to be there last year before Caleb Williams. Yeah. So I don't know. Ben said, the Bears were the team that of course he could just be saying this, but he said the Bears were the team that I worried about the most in that division. I feel like it was a sleeping giant. Well, we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to note that he turned down the Redskins the Redskins were coming in for an interview, for a second interview, and when they were in the air, he said, "No, I don't want to talk to you guys. I'm pulling my name from the I'm pulling my name out. I don't want to talk to you." And that looks like it was a mistake, considering how the Redskins have looked this year. But I would think, though, and from the jobs that were open that he interviewed for, I'm guessing he went to Chicago because of Caleb Williams. They actually may have a franchise quarterback. The other places he talked to don't. Right. And they'll have to figure that out. And you have to, as we all know, you have to have a quarterback in the NFL these days. You're going to go somewhere. Nick, what are your thoughts on all this upheaval? Because I got to be honest with you, my concern is I can also understand why the Lions decided to go with at least one veteran coach, because I would be kind of nervous going into the next season with two inexperienced coordinators who have never had a job. If they had promoted from within, that's what they would have done.
They did it before when they put in Glenn as defensive coordinator and Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator. Worked out.
Yeah.
So, I actually never know what to think about assistants and coordinators and all that. First of all, I don't pay attention to assistants. Like a linebackers coach, I didn't even know this guy was the linebackers coach. Yeah. I really didn't. Like, how's he going to work out as a defensive coordinator? Who the hell knows? If you remember, Dan Campbell brought in an experienced offensive coordinator when he first started.
Yeah, Anthony Lynn.
Yeah, and
he lasted half a year.
You know what? that tells me that Dan Campbell will pull the plug if it's not working really fast.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing at all. The thing I'm starting to get used to is somebody actually wants the Lions' assistants. And not after they get fired with the coach.
Yeah, not just coordinators, but the position coaches and the like too were all being interviewed.
Right. One of the defensive assistants went to be the defensive coordinator in New England.
Yeah, Terrell Williams. He was the defensive line coach.
Yeah, and hell, the offensive and defensive coordinators both got head coaching jobs. I mean, they were just rated this year. Yep. So, which is a really new thing because, well, first of all, any head coach that head coaches the Lions never gets a second head coaching job. There's still I don't remember the last one that did.
Well, the interesting trivia I saw was the last Lions coordinator to be hired from Lions coordinator to a head coaching job was Don Shula.
Yeah.
By I believe it was the Colts back in the in the 60s, like 63. 60s? Yeah, 1963, I believe.
You're right.
That's how long it's been since the Lions have had an in-demand coordinator.
So 62 years. So
yeah.
And, well before my time. So but
and then you have people saying, "What? Don Shula worked for the Lions?" Yeah, the Lions had a lot of talented assistant coaches back in the day. Yeah. I mean, thinking like it wasn't
Chuck Knox.
Chuck Knox is who I'm thinking of. Exactly. There's a couple, that became very successful head coaches. Unfortunately, the Lions themselves couldn't figure that out. So back in the day. So
and Chuck Knox.
Yeah.
Twice wanted to come back to the Lions.
Yeah.
Neither time in the later part of the decade in the 70s, and both times he was rebuffed. And I don't know why. I'm not sure if there was something with he and Bill Ford, or I haven't gotten to the part of the book, Bill's book yet, about maybe in fact, I'm just starting that chapter about 1973 on, because 73 was the year that Knox left the Lions, went to the Rams, and at least once, if not twice, Chuck Knox expressed interest in coming back to Detroit to coach the Lions when they were looking for coaches, and he never got a sniff. And I don't understand that, because he was very successful with the Rams, and he wanted to come back, and they never gave him a chance.
Well, Greg, when Tommy Hudspeth's available, you got to hire him.
Just like Matt Millen couldn't let Marty Morningwig out of the building. Remember that?
Right. Yes.
Oh God. You know what's weird about Bill's book? Actually, I'm reading it too, and I read the part about Chuck Knox, and I cannot tell you the answer to your question, Greg, as to why he didn't what it was anymore, because Bill wrote that book so well. I get infuriated reading some of that shit that happened and the decisions made. Like the thing that used to get me, and one of the first things I remember when I started following the Lions was every fucking player was in a holdout with Russ Thomas.
Yes.
Like literally, that was the case. Like every goddamn year, it's like
every year.
Billy Sims is holding out.
Right.
Yep.
Barry Sanders is holding out, and Chuck, whatever his name,
Chuck Schmidt. Chuck Schmidt.
And like this drama every single goddamn year, and it's like, how do you build a team with that kind of insanity?
I think Andre Ware missed almost all of his first training camp because he was holding out too.
Well, that was not sort of a bad thing.
All right. Speaking of general managers, obviously Brad Holmes did his annual end of the season presser. He talked for about a half hour. And really all that really came out of it were a couple of quotes where, one, he said, obviously, we said we won 15 games. We're not going to change things that much. But he said that they're going to stay the course. He is not going to go into the Rams' infamous F them picks mode, like going all in. And he did promise that there would be no overreaction to the Lions' early exit, and not to expect crazy wholesale changes to the roster. And Greg, it's exactly what you think he would say. They won 15 games with a crippled roster. They probably won't win. Obviously, they won't win 15 games next year. But this is still a playoff team. This is still a top of the league roster, and it makes sense that right now they're just trying to fill around the edges, fill those holes that to get this team over the hump. So it was exactly what I expected Brad Holmes to say. No, he likes where the team's at. He's disappointed with what happened, but he's not going to dwell on it and move on. So I guess that's what you want your general manager to say.
Oh yeah, of course. It's silly to I mean, they've got such a good young core. Yeah, of course he's gonna. Yeah, of course. That's the smart move. I know that there's emotions run high after these kinds of things, and but I don't. But you know what? I don't think the fans though, Al, even think that there's a lot of wholesale changes that need to be made. I as upset as they are over the way things ended, as upset as they are at Ben Johnson for going to a division rival, I don't think that they believe that the Lions' opportunity to continue to win is gone. I don't think they believe that. I think they're fine with Brad saying exactly what he said, because it's true. I mean, they've got a lot of talent. I love what Nick said about when he made the analogy about we went to the NFC Championships. All we have to do is tweak a few dials here and pull a couple of levers there. We'll be back. I love that, but it doesn't work out that way. He's right. It does not work out that way, and it's out of all the sports, the NFL might be the toughest to be consistently good at. I think in the other sports you can be good for longer windows of time than you can be in the NFL, and because I think part of that is because the players' careers themselves are so short. The players themselves have narrow windows as a rule. I think the average length of an NFL player's career is like 2.5 years or something. So it's just from a health standpoint, that's what, as much as I don't like the Chiefs, that's what makes the Chiefs, what they're doing and what the Patriots used to do, so impressive. It's hard to be at the top of the league in the NFL for that long period of time. But I don't think the Lions are in any way, shape, or form in danger of slipping back to the middle of the pack or anything like that. I think they're still a very, very good team. And frankly, once they get all those guys back on defense that were out last year, I think that they might. You mentioned they may not win 15 games, okay, but I think when they get all those guys back on defense, they could make a deeper playoff run with the worst record potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts on all this?
I agree with Greg. I don't think there's nothing to panic about. They had a bad playoff game. They won 15 games this year.
But, Nick, I have my pitchfork ready to go.
Good for you. Then keep shoveling the manure. And I don't think – why would you panic? You will have to make adjustments. You will have to beef it up. You're going to lose some players. You're going to have to fill those roles. You want to keep that offense healthy because if Jared Goff goes down or like Penei Sewell goes down, that's a different game. That offense, the air is taken out of those guys. Or taken out of that offense. Your defensive players get healthy. You have a good kicker now. They could make a run for it. All you got to do is get into the playoffs. And, killing yourself for the number one seed, there's plus and minus to that. And I'm wondering if, one kind of little factor in there is the 2-week layoff between games. Sometimes that kind of slows the team down too. And but who knows? Just get into the playoffs and show what you can do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So it's like the President's Trophy thing in the NHL. Anybody who wins a President's Trophy is cursed in the playoffs.
Yeah. So, God forbid if you even touch it. So.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about when it comes to the NFL and the Lions, because next time we talk will be, I believe, probably right after the Super Bowl, as a matter of fact, which will be obviously we mentioned earlier the Eagles and the Chiefs. One more question about the NFL. Greg, is the NFL fixed? That's all I hear now. That the NFL is that the Chiefs have the NFL in their pocket, specifically the referees. I mean, I'll just ask you this: do you think if there was a actual fix in the NFL that the NFL had a so-called script, would they have a small market team in Kansas City as the best team in the league? I think not. You know who would be in the Super Bowl if there was a script? The Cowboys. You know? Yeah, that's another thing I'm sick and tired of hearing about. The NFL is rigged. The NFL is fixed. No, and they always talk about the refs. You know what? Never attribute. What is the term? Never blame malice when there's when instead of incompetence. Refs are incompetent. They aren't. I don't think they're crooked. They're just incompetent at this point.
Yeah, I agree. NFL officiating is a mixed bag. There's no question about it. It's maybe in fairness, it probably is the toughest sport to officiate on the field. It probably is.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many weird rules and the nature of the game. And you don't understand how fast that game is until you're on the field. It's a lot faster than it looks on television. And these calls have to be made, now I think what frustrates the fans, though, is when the calls go to New York or to replay, and they come back not the way that they think they should come back. And then you've got they always have the referee and analyst in the booth, whether it's Gene Steratore or whoever, in the booth. And it doesn't help when Gene Steratore even says, I don't know about that one.
Right.
I don't think, and to Gene's credit, he won't always just take the official side.
Right.
He will say, I don't know about that, and that makes the fans feel worse because now here's an official saying that they blew it. I think that's what and that was like the Josh Allen 4th and 1 play last night. Is that they went to review and it still came back probably wrong. No, I'm with you though. I don't think the fix is out. But I will say this: you can't tell me. You mentioned, well, they wouldn't fix it for a small team in Kansas City, but you can't tell me the NFL doesn't get a cut of those State Farm commercials, those Doritos commercials, those Head and Shoulders commercials. You can't tell me the NFL isn't making some money off of, and they even made I think Lifetime or somebody came out with a movie last winter. I want to say last winter, last late fall. It was a Chiefs love story. I don't know if you guys heard about this. They did a movie, a fictional movie of two Chiefs fans falling in love. It just enough. I think what's got people upset.
Oh my God, I've never heard that. I wish I did.
That is true. Yeah, it is true.
I think what's got people upset is the Chiefs are being forced. It seems like the Chiefs are being forced down everyone's throats. And when the Patriots were winning every year, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that they were being forced down our throats because I didn't see a lot of Tom Brady commercials. I didn't see a lot of Bill Belichick commercials. I didn't see. Now you got Andy Reid in commercials. You got the Kelsey brothers, Taylor Swift. It never ends, and that's what I think has got people. It's not just the Chiefs; it's everything that comes with the Chiefs, all the baggage they bring, in terms of all these other things. And so you start to get, of course, you're going to get these, talk about rigged. I don't think it's rigged either, but they do seem to get a lot of their fair share of breaks and calls that do go their way. They're a good football team. There's no question about it. They're very good. I mean, come on, let's face it. But, Travis Kelce, who I'm faster than, I think, is open by 10 yards every time. There was a play in that game, not this game, but the game before that, where Mahomes was falling and threw it to Kelce, who was standing still in the end zone, like a statue, and still caught it. It's like, guys, this isn't, OTAs or non-contact rules in May. This is the playoffs. This is Travis Kelce. How can nobody cover this guy? Every time Mahomes throws to him, there's nobody even in the frame, in the TV frame. It's like he's throwing him like they're playing warm up, pitch and catch. Nobody covers Kelce. It's unbelievable. I think fans are just sick of. This is what happens when you win.
Yeah,
you're going to wear the black hat. Nobody wants. This country does not like dynasties of any sort. They don't like corporation dynasties. They don't like it. They don't like teams winning every year. They want variety. The only teams that like dynasties are the fans of the dynasties. Other than that, everybody wants to see you get knocked on your keister because we're a country that wants variety. And they want to see different teams. And unfortunately, we're getting the same matchup now that we had 2 years ago.
Yeah, look, everybody cheers for the underdog in the NCAA tournament, for example. Yeah. No one roots for Duke other than Duke fans. The same thing. And by the way, Nick, if you want to see the movie, it's called Holiday Touchdown: A Chiefs Love Story, and it's on the Hallmark Channel.
Oh, that makes my sides feel warm and fuzzy.
Gives you the warm fuzzies, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of like if I ate too much chili, kind of warm.
All right, that sounds like a good point. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to make the one comment. I agree with Greg, but I think the whole dynasty thing is then the league who has this dynasty going on markets the shit out of it, and it just fatigues everybody that doesn't give a crap.
Yeah.
Like, I probably wouldn't care as much, if I didn't see those damn commercials with the Chiefs in there. And that's the thing with the Cowboys. They suck, and I get fatigued listening about stories about them, because if you could jump on like the sports pages, there's always a Cowboy story, and it's like, why should there be?
Right. It's true.
Yeah, and I don't ever want to hear fumble Rooski do with giant Andy Reid face on my TV screen ever again. No, even though it looks like he's having a hell of a time making those ads, they're run 5 times a game, every game. And you're right. I think that is playing a lot into it. It's just much like there was Astros fatigue and everybody became Tigers fans in the playoffs last year. I know everybody would have much rather seen a Lions or Washington play the Bills, more than likely, or even Baltimore for that matter. But I think everybody's going to be rooting for the Eagles. Just as Greg said, no one likes a dynasty, and it's time for this one to end. So go Eagles, and please, and put an end to our Kelsey Mahomes misery. With that, let's talk some Tigers real quick, because we didn't have a chance to do it last podcast because we're, again, running short on time, as always. And there has been some stuff going on with the Tigers. They had a trade kind of blow up in their face again because of, guess what, Nick, a non-trade clause, even though it was the other team this time. But we didn't get a chance to talk about the Torres signing, which happened a few weeks ago. And that I have no idea if I know I'm probably not pronouncing Gleyber, however Bob pronounced it, he knew, Torres. But he got signed to a 1-year, $50 million deal, and he's going to play second base. And he's actually a pretty good player. Career 774 OPS. Last year he hit 15 home runs, 63 RBI, 709 OPS, but he did the majority of his damage in the second half because he slumped during the first half. And this is still a young player. He's only 27 years old. Not the best defensive player, but neither was Colt Keith. But honestly, guys, I think the more interesting fallout from this signing is not just the new second baseman. It's the fact that they're moving Colt Keith to first base and essentially telling Spencer Torkelson, you're going to have to hit your way onto the team, and even then it's just going to be as a DH, maybe as a backup first baseman. So I don't know where to go with this, guys. Torres is an upgrade. He will help the offense. He's not a bad offensive player. I'm just wondering if Colt Keith is going to hit enough to be a first baseman, though. Because you expect your first baseman to, be a 30 home run, 100 RBI, 850, 900 OPS guy. I don't know if Colt Keith is that, or at least he's not that yet. So, and obviously Torkelson, I'm ready for this team to move on from him. So, thank goodness. So, thoughts on Torres becoming a new second baseman, Greg?
Well, it's so funny because last year at this time, the Tigers were Colt Keith was the second baseman of the future, right? He was paid out a bunch of money to be the second baseman of the future before he even set foot on an
was it a 6 or 8 year contract he signed?
And he
pretty
was
long-term deal. Yeah,
he was going to be the second baseman, and I mean that was it. I remember writing a piece last year comparing him to how Lou Whitaker started when Lou was like 20 years old and everything, and now all of a sudden he's a first baseman. Yeah, and so there seems to be, and then of course we're talking about things we're getting sick and tired of talking about, and this seems to be the theme of the show. Spencer Torkelson is right up there up there with me.
He's going up there on the banned list, I think, at this point.
Okay. Anyway, so I bring him up because obviously this has a ripple effect. If Colt Keith can be the first baseman, then what do you do with Torque? Well, he could be a right-handed hitting DH. That's true. But then they also get who's going to be the left-handed DH? Isn't there what's his face? Kerry Carpenter.
Kerry Carpenter,
the DH, and if Carpenter ever figures out how to hit lefties, bye Torque, of course.
Yeah.
Well, but back to Keith. I don't know what to make of. I get a little nervous when teams switch guys around like that. I remember when they signed Prince Fielder, and they which came out of nowhere, and then of course Prince played first, and that's the only position he played. So they had to move Miguel Cabrera to third base, but at least Miguel had played there before. In fact, when he signed with the Tigers, he signed as a third baseman. He was a third baseman, so that was okay. That didn't bother me too much because they had to make room for Prince.
Right.
But when you start moving young players around the diamond, and I know first base. First of all, it's a lot harder to play first base than people make it out to be, but it's still one of these positions to play. I just get a little nervous when organizations take young players and start moving them around the diamond like that. Now, I don't know what this means. To your point about the hitting, we'll see. I mean, I think Cole Keith, I'm not going to give up on him as a hitter.
No, not yet. No, exactly.
There's enough there. I don't know he'll ever be what you're talking about, which is that 30 home run RBI guy. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I just get a little nervous when players get moved around the infield like that, with just to make room for a guy who's not going to be here. Now, if they were doing this because Torres was some hotshot 23-year-old kid, okay.
Yeah.
They're pushing Cole Keith to first base to make room for an older guy who I don't know how much he's got a lot of tread on the tires. I don't know how much longer he's going to last. Then what do you do then? Would Cole Keith move back to second base? Is he going to be? The Twins moved Rod Carew from second base to first base, and Rod never left first base. He stayed at first base for the rest of his career. I don't know what they're going to do with Keith now. Do you move him back?
Well, I would say this. Maybe they ultimately think they keep telling us Jace Jung is a third baseman. Maybe they ultimately think he's going to be the second baseman of the future because that's where he started before they moved him to third base. But you make a good point about moving young players around because doesn't that give you kind of Nick Castellanos vibes a little bit? The way they jerked him around. Yeah, but even though the problem with him was he was bad every place he played on the field. That was, I think, the difference. But even it got to the point of Castellanos, he got tired of it. Because they wanted him to move to first base, and he said, no, because you've already jerked me around. You've given me enough gloves already. And at the time, I didn't blame him one bit. Nick, your thoughts? I know you love talking Tigers.
I actually, as we're talking about this, I gotta say, I don't understand what the Tigers are doing.
Yeah.
Just generally, I really don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
They all of last year was let the young guys play. Let's give them at bats, and we're not going to block the young guys. And like you were saying, Cole Keith is the second baseman of the future. Here's this long-term deal to lock him up. Now we move him over to first base, and we bring in this one guy who's, like Bob said, he was 27 years old. I don't know, but
right.
Okay, so that he would be entering his prime, and you sign him for a 1-year deal to play second base, and you move over your second baseman of the future to first base for what?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Why this 1 year? It's like this 1 year stopgap before they do what?
Right,
and
exactly.
To move that
Right.
And then to move the third baseman whose natural position is second base.
Right.
But putting him on second base, why not just put him on second base? Because you just moved over your second baseman.
Yeah.
And let him get his reps in on second base.
Yeah.
Unless you have no clue what you're going to do with third base. And then so you put this – it's like, let me put this guy in an awkward situation. Let me piss away another year of his development at the position he should be in. I don't get it. Mm-hmm. And let me sign a 100-year-old relief pitcher off of another team because nobody else wants them, and I like relief pitchers. Like I don't get it. I have no idea what that team is trying to do. So
yeah, because obviously speaking
I
of
that, to analyze it. I don't get it.
Yeah, because speaking of old pitchers, the Tigers supposedly had a trade in place with the Astros for veteran reliever Ryan Presley. Yeah. He's up there. I think he's like 36, 37 years old. Apparently, the deal fell through because he refused to waive his no-trade clause. But he did waive it to go to the Cubs instead. So, obviously, the Tigers need relief pitching. I mean, you always need more arms. And because Greg and I have always said in this show that if there's relief pitching is fungible. It's very mercurial. What could be someone who could be good 1 year could fall off the planet on the next. It's just how relievers are. So yeah, I can see wanting to stockpile good arms, but it just seems odd that they're going for someone like Ryan Presley. When if anything they should be going as Bob mentioned, Jack Flaherty, who has said he would not mind coming back to Detroit, and it's odd that. Only thing I can think of Flaherty is that everybody's concerned about the injury history. Specifically, he did miss starts at the Tigers because of his back. And supposedly he had cortisone shots. But yeah, Greg, Nick makes a great point, is that the Tigers tell us they have a plan, but at times I'm not sure what the plan actually is, other than bringing up our young players from minor leagues. But I don't see how you can build a consistent contender with just using guys from the minor, your own pipeline. You have to get things from other places, and and this is another one of Nick's always brought up, is that we've yet to see the Tigers' new regime really come through with big trades or smart trades. And the jury's. I'm sorry. Nick's got me sold on this. I wonder what the plan is. So I'm not really sure what it is.
No, Nick's 100% right. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is either. I think back to those great Tigers teams. Well, they only won one World Series, but the '84 team, which was made up large that core, Morris and Petrie and Parrish and Gibson and Whitaker and Trammell and Brookins were all homegrown farmhands. That's true.
Yep.
But they didn't get over the hump until they made trades and signed free agents like Bill Evans, Dave Bergman, Willie Hernandez, Rupert Jones.
Chet Lemon.
Chet Lemon. That's another good.
And that is the star for star trade that you don't see as much anymore, because the Chet Lemon was Steve Kemp, who was a very, very good player in his own right.
Say what you will about Jim Campbell, but he understood Bill Joy, but they understood that young core, as good as it was, wasn't good enough by itself to Al's point, by itself, to get them over the hump. So they went outside the organization and got some people. And those people that they got outside the organization were all key contributors to the 84 championship team. So I look at this the same way. We got to get rid of Matt Vierling. Matt Vierling can't play third base anymore. I mean, he can't.
Right.
We could put a guy out there without a glove and you'd do just as well. You got to get rid of him. He's an outfielder or a DH or something. He's not a third baseman. So I don't know about some of these young guys. Jace, Colt, Malloy. There's a lot of exciting young pieces, but we don't really know how good they're going to be. And they're just, by the time you have to wait on these kids. They're not going to become a core until they've been together for 3, 4, 5 years. And they're a little more grizzled. They get into their mid to late 20s, you can start talking about it. But we've already got, Tarek Skubal, who's already 28, believe it or not. He'll be 30 before you blink your eye. I mean, they need to get people in here now, not just sit here and wait until, let's just wait till these kids, will sit by the oven, wait for them to come out after they're cooked. You can't do that now. This is the time now to get some P. And I'm not talking about signing aging guys for 1 year. I'm talking making a genuine. This Bregman thing. Now, I will say this: I do commend the Tigers for playing chicken with Bregman, because I think I think we've seen now that these stars who are free agents don't sign in November, December like they used to in the old days. You can wait these guys out. I don't care if it's Boris or not. You can wait these guys out a little bit, and wait till the market shrinks, and that's what you do. And I give them credit. The Tigers credit for not jumping all over Bregman like they jumped all over Baez back in 2021 or 22, whenever it was. They jumped all over Baez like they couldn't wait. But now they've kind of Now even the Astros are getting back into the Bregman thing. This is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And to Bob's point, Bregman's a nice player, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Okay. Now he might be of the available free agents right now. Yeah, he's probably as good as you're going to get, and he would be a nice fit to this team. There's no question about it. But I don't look at the Bregman thing as being cheap. I think I look at the Bregman thing as smart. I think they're being smart about it. I still think they're going to sign him. I still think we're going to open the papers on like February 10th and see that they've signed him. I really believe that. And it would be to their credit that they've done that. I think Bregman is painting. I think the Bregman camp is painting themselves in a corner. The longer they wait, I'm telling you, the longer they wait, the less valuable this guy becomes. And he's not going to get the money he wants. I guarantee you, he's not going to get it.
Yeah. All right. I think with that, we need to start wrapping things up. As we got a late start today, and obviously with Bob, we always have a lot to cover. And we've kind of covered the Pistons and Red Wings with Bob, and we'll have lots more to talk about with those two teams going on, especially with now the Lions season is over, and we still have a few weeks till pitchers and catchers report, which is honestly less than a month away at this point, amazingly enough. So I think, guys, that means it's time for our jerk of the week. Nick, who's your jerk?
Well, this person made his name as one of the worst owners in the NFL. And so, as you guys know, all Lions fans know that they lost to the Washington Commanders, who actually had a hell of a season going, 12-5, right? And that is all under new ownership that just took over at the beginning of last season, I believe, or beginning of this season, something like that. But their previous owner, Dan Snyder, apparently there was an article that he hates the fact that the Commanders are doing well and in the playoffs. And so my jerk of the week is Dan Snyder, because that guy was like a cancer. That guy, in so many ways, not just like the buffoonishness of William Clay Ford or anything like that, but just an utter cancer to that organization. It was a fantastic franchise before he bought it. And they're doing well after he was forced to sell it. Yeah. Which goes back to our old thing. It starts at the top. And he created such a shit show, and he's such an awful human being, that my jerk of the week is former Washington Redskins Commanders owner Dan Snyder.
You can never go wrong if Dan Snyder is your jerk of the week. Well, he's a reprehensible human being. Sometimes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. All right, Greg, who's your jerk?
Well, this is a guy who I actually have no problems with. I actually like Nate Burleson. I really do. I think I followed Nate's career after football. He's done a great job in broadcasting, even with non-sports related shows. He's a good-looking guy. He's affable. He's great on camera. He seems like a really nice dude, but he missed the mark. He was on the CBS. I think it was after the NFC Championship game, and he did this cardinal sin that Al always talks about, which is telling fans how to fan. And Nate said, don't get caught up in the narrative of the Chiefs, of having Chiefs fatigue and getting sick of the Chiefs. Don't feel that way. You should actually feel like you're witnessing greatness, and just be glad that you're alive to see it. I'm like, oh, Nate. Nate has fallen. Nate Burleson has fallen. Oh my gosh, Nate, no. Don't tell us how to feel about the Chiefs of all teams. Don't tell us how to feel about the Chiefs. Don't say those things. Right. Don't tell us that we should be happy to be alive to see the Chiefs win Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. And don't. So I don't know where that came from. I don't know where Nate Burleson. I have no idea. Now I like Nate. He still likes the Lions. He pumps the Lions up every chance he gets. He pumps the city of Detroit up every chance he gets.
Oh yeah.
He missed the mark on that one, boy. You don't say that kind of thing. Tell people that they should be glad they're alive to watch the Chiefs. Like we should be, we should be blessed to see such greatness. Don't be mad. Don't be fatigued by the Chiefs. Embrace it. Love it. Enjoy it. Be glad. This is a great time to be alive, guys. We're watching the Chiefs, baby. You got to be so happy to be alive right now. Nate, I'm sorry. I can't do it. So Nate Burleson's my jerk of the week.
Yes, Chiefs fatigue is definitely kicked in. Yeah, and that's the thing. Don't ever tell people how to be a fan. It never ends well. All right, I was going to go with Jerry Jones as my jerk of the week for essentially making his head coaching announcement as a Friday night news dump. But since I already brought that up with Bob, my jerk of the week, I'm going to go with the Miami Heat and what's going on between the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. That has become, talk about a toxic relationship. Butler got suspended again today for the third time, I believe, this year. I believe the reason this time is that he walked out of the shoot-around. They were playing tonight. He walked out of the shoot-around when he was informed he wasn't going to be starting. And this is one of those things where, at this point, don't even bring him back to the team. Just, you can't play. You can't put this guy in the locker room anymore. You just send him home and then you trade him when the opportunity arises. I'm just talking about fatigue. I am fatigued about NBA drama in general. I am for players having power. They really do deserve it because they're the reasons these teams are worth so much damn money, and they deserve every money they get because that's what the market says. But there are times where I feel like the players take the power to the extreme. They go over the top and they start making stupid decisions. And I think at this point we're probably reached that with Jimmy Butler. Just because I guess he doesn't want to play for the Heat anymore, and he's going to force a trade by being a knucklehead or doing shit like this. And just raise I believe another thing he did, which was reported, that the team waited on the tarmac for him for 2 hours. He was 2 hours late for a flight, for example.
Oh God.
Yeah, how to make friends and that's not how you do it. Is causing your team to sit on the tarmac for 2 hours. At this point, I just want it over and done with. And what gets me is that, look at the Heat are supposedly one of the best run franchises in the NBA with Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. Right. Yet they're allowed. Jimmy Butler is essentially walking all over them, and it's gotten to the point where it's gone beyond. It's beyond the pale at this point. It's absolutely ridiculous. So my jerk of the week are the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler for essentially making a mockery of whatever the hell they're doing, and just trade them at this point, and be done with it. And maybe the Pistons will get involved and they'll be able to get a draft pick or something for taking on some salary to make room for this trade. But regardless of all that, I just want it to end. So my jerk of the week is the drama between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. Just trade his ass. Yeah. All right.
That's a good
one. All right. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I was going to say, Jimmy Butler has a history of what you just described.
Yes, he does. He burns bridges.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes. And it seems, and it's funny, it seems to happen more in the NBA than any other league for the most part. Mm-hmm. Where guys burn bridges, act like knuckleheads, and they land on their feet with contending teams. Go figure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, we need to get the hell out of here because it's getting late. So I guess this is where I usually send it to Greg, where he gets out the thank yous and the social media and all that fun stuff. So the floor is yours, Greg.
Sure, absolutely. Next time we are going to be with you will be February the 10th. We will be welcoming back City Hall. The city is going to talk about the NBA trade deadline, which will have occurred February the 6th. So City will break it down for us. We haven't got a chance to talk to him about the Pistons who have since before the season began. So I'll be interested to see what he says or he thinks about the relatively hot start, even though they're essentially 500, but for a team that won 14 games, that's quite an improvement. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about any moves that the Pistons may or may not have made at the trade deadline. So we'll talk to City on February 10th. Working to get Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton back here. We want to talk to him and find out what happened last year, a very disappointing season for the Eagles. We'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. And I want to just thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up for this nonsense. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Subscribe to gregeno.substack.com. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for making Monday night so gosh darn fun.
Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys, I might throw this out there, that we may have to delay the 10th podcast on the 10th, because guess who's having a colonoscopy that day?
Oh, boy. Oh,
yeah.
That day. Okay.
That day, and it's actually at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, well, yeah, we can't do it.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out. We'll get it out there. I was going to tell you guys after the podcast, but it just came up. So, but yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards. But yeah, we'll either postpone it or bump it to the 11th. We'll figure it out. Yes. Okay, Nick, floor is yours. You want to tell everybody where you are available online?
Yes, in 2 places, one on Twitter and on Blue Sky less so. I'm still more active on Twitter. You can see my handles on each of those under my name on the screen here. So jump in if you want to talk about Detroit sports and probably a few other things that I'm interested in. So
All right.
that's where you can find me.
Yep. And as always, guys, if we would appreciate if you like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the show. And you can find us pretty much anywhere podcasts are aggregated. Just do a search for the Knee Jerks Podcast, and you can find us. And we're at the usual places: Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, Ghana. TheKneeJerks.net is our homepage. So if you want to find the links to any of our social media accounts, to any links to books we've talked about, links for author links, story links, they're all going to be at TheKneeJerks.net. You can also directly download the podcast from TheKneeJerks.net and put it right on your phone, rather if you don't want to deal with a podcast app. I think that about covers it. So we'll be back sometime in 2 weeks, around that time. Oh God, a colonoscopy, that's going to be so much fun. Anyway, and 2-day prep. Oh boy. So that's going to be real fun. So I'll be in a great mood for the next podcast, I'm sure. Anyway, we need to get the hell out of here. So until this time, approximately 2 weeks from now, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, guys.
And of course, did we remember to pimp your Substack, Greg? GregEno.substack.com. Just want to get that out there one more time. And of course, Mr. Out of Bounds, Greg Eno.
Charlie, we'll see you in 2 weeks plus.
Yes. Right.